Morning. The opening song today is I Am Walking the Path of Peace, and we'll sing about peace, hope, and love. We want to welcome you to Winfield United. No matter who you are, no matter who you love, no matter where you are in your own faith journey, you're welcome here. And we hope you'll find this a safe community to support and encourage you on your journey. On this Remembrance Day weekend, we welcome you to join us in remembering and reflecting.
We also acknowledge that we are standing on the unceded and traditional territory of the Okanagan Silex people. We are very grateful for their stewardship of the land, for their customs, their communities, their celebrations that they have for a millennium, many millenniums shared on this land. We also acknowledge the violence that happened to these communities, and we are committed to joining them in the reconciliation process.
I want to say, first of all, that this was a collaborative process between Bev and myself, and we come from different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, different faith backgrounds, and so in the talk today, our attempt will be to bridge whatever gaps there might have been and in our presentation. So it's been very collaborative in this way. From this perspective, it'll be a different presentation than we've given before. We'll do a little conversation at times in the reflection. Okay? So, life and work of the church.
So are there any announcements?
Oh.
I just wanted to remind all the thrift shop coordinators that we would like to have a short meeting after church. So that'll be about a third of the congregation, please. And we'll meet in the Matthews room. Get your coffee and come down there. Thanks.
Just a quick note to say that Louise has very kindly volunteered to take care of my kitties over the holidays, so thank you for your attention.
Good morning, everyone. I am looking for something very, very special. As you know, we're having our pageant on Saturday the 14th, 2 to 4 in the afternoon. So I'm hoping the seniors bus is going to bring people from the lodge and the manor, et cetera, which would be wonderful. And on the 15th is our regular service. But what I'm looking for that's very special, who has a baby, preferably an infant? Hold on, I know I'm going to put grandparents in there and great-grandparents, but I am looking for a baby under 6 months if possible. And if their parents want, I don't want to use a doll if I don't have to. I have some friends outside the church that I might ask too. So if you know of anyone, please ask them if they'd consider being Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus. Their role is only to walk up here and sit, and the baby goes in the manger. Or if the baby doesn't want to go in the manger and wants to cry, mommy can hold. Any of my grandchildren are now over a year, so they're not going to make it. They're going to toddle all over the place. Anybody who has little grandchildren or children or greats, we would appreciate them as angels. We're still looking for some shepherds. These people do not have to be within the church. One of the things when we started this was to have this pageant beyond us, open to the community. And it's a non-denominational. I know the music section of it is amazing, and I know 3 ladies who are all here this morning, Melanie, Karen, and Elaine, who have been working on the music. And I believe your first practice is this Friday for your choir? Yep. So soon after that, and we have a narrator, Lynn. So we have the key parts. We just need the fill-in people. These people do not have to do anything. I know Sharon down there wants to be a wise woman instead of a wise man, and that's just fine. So anybody who would like any of the parts, please talk to me. Thank you.
I think we've had 4 new babies in our Al Shahud family this year, so maybe one of our refugee families may want to come and be the baby.
I have an announcement. My daughter, Christy Gordon, wrote a book called Become a Great Artist, and it is now released as of November the 5th. It's a big thrill. And it's particularly good if anybody here has a grandchild in their teens or a little bit older, and they want to be an artist. I highly recommend this book. So you can get it on Amazon over Chapters. It's now available for purchase. And that's all I have to say.
I missed a part here too. I'm wondering if there are any guests. I know of 2 guests that are here. Any other guests that are here that you'd like to introduce? Yes. My name's John Plant. Just a sec. We're going to give you a microphone, John.
Hold it out? Okay. My name's John Plant. We moved to Lake Country from Edmonton and other places off and on 5 years ago. And it's my first time back in the United Church since I attended regularly in one in Calgary. So,
welcome, John. And we have some guests who have come with us today that we're delighted to have here. Do you want to introduce yourselves? Sure.
I'm Jeff, and this is my partner Phoebe, and we're from Nelson, and these are my folks, Don and Bev.
You need to put it up closer.
And thanks for having us today.
So that's our youngest son, Jeff, and his lovely partner, Phoebe, and we're delighted to have them here today.
Nelson.
From Nelson.
From up for the weekend. We're delighted to have them. One of the really meaningful customs in this church has been God moments. Moments when you've particularly felt the Spirit as a part of your life. So this could be recent incidents, it could be something in the past. I invite you at this time to share whatever God moments that you'd like to share with the group this morning. Bob?
I wish I had a disciplined meditative life. I'm not disciplined about much in my life, but every once in a while I keep on sort of deciding I'm going to begin again. And so I've been reading Richard Wagamese and his Embers meditations over this past week, and I just have been really thinking about this morning's meditation as I read it, and he was talking about standing in the valley and calling out and getting the echo back. And he said if you yell out Yahoo, it echoes back Yahoo. Or if you yell out Yeehaw, it echoes back Yeehaw. And the lesson he learned from that, and the lesson I've been thinking about, is whatever you shout out to the world shouts back to you. And I've really been thinking about that.
Thank you, Bob.
I had a very special God moment this week. Tom had another surgery on Wednesday, but before his surgery, our specialist phoned him and talked to him and calmed him down. And then after his surgery, the specialist phoned me to tell me that all had gone well. It's very rare that we get doctors these days that actually phone and have the time to phone and let the people at home and the person having the surgery know how well they're doing. So it certainly was a God moment and a relief for me.
Thanks, Kim. I think a lot of you know my youngest grandson, Sam. He used to come to Sunday school. He's 12 now, and he was chosen from his school to take a leadership course down at the coast in Abbotsford. And I guess they had their lunches, and they were able to go out into sit on benches or whatever. Anyway, Sam said, he calls me Mam. I saw a homeless man, and I gave him my lunch. And he said, I was hungry, but it was okay because I know he was hungrier. So it just makes your heart happy to know that the kids that are coming behind us are doing nice things. That was my God moment.
Thank you, Sandy. Any other God moments?
I need to do this. I missed something.
Okay.
I'm not well practiced in this. I missed are there any celebrations, birthdays or anniversaries? I know there are at least 3 coming up this week. Sandy Bogardus, your birthday's this week on the 13th. And the day after, and next to you, Anne Nightingale. And then Margaret Kyle. 3 wonderful, wonderful women. All have a birthday this week. Yeah. Any other birthdays or celebrations, anniversaries? Okay, happy birthday. We will all hold you close and celebrate you this week, thinking of the day of your birth.
Well, the birthdays are clearly God moments, and I'll reopen this the possibility of you sharing your God moments at this time. If any of you have not had the opportunity, would anybody still like to share a God moment? Kim? Oh, no, you're just carrying the mic. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Bev.
light this candle, it is a reminder of how, as we move forward, each of us in our spiritual journey, that we have found wisdom and love in this community. It is a call for each of us to keep an open mind and heart to receive what we need for the journey for this day and this week, and to bring our light, each of us to bring our light out into the world.
As it's Remembrance Day weekend, we want to. Okay, go ahead, Bev. All right.
So this morning, on Remembrance Sunday, we give is my mic on?
Bev,
This, okay. On Remembrance Sunday, we give thanks. We give thanks for the peacekeepers and the pacifists and the peacemakers, the peace activists, for those who served on the front lines and those who protest and march, for those who volunteered and those who waited anxiously at home, for those who hoped that things would just get better, and for those who could not stand by and wait. We give thanks for those who believed that the world could be a better place. We remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, trusting that others could and would carry the torch. We give thanks for those who were once enemies and have now become friends and allies. This is an opening prayer that was prepared by a Reverend Dr. Neil Parker, who is a military chaplain in the Canadian Army. And I felt really pleased to be able to share his prayer of opening.
Another writing that goes back to the First World War that most of you will be familiar with was written in 1915 by Dr. John McCrae. And Dr. John McCrae wrote in Flanders Fields. He wrote in Flanders Fields when just after a close friend and former student of his was killed by a German bomb. And that evening, he wrote the poem in Flanders Fields. I'd like to read it to you. I know it's familiar. Read it to you, and after the reading, we'll just take a minute's silence to remember those that you may be thinking about as you think about Remembrance Day. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow. Between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up your quarrel, our quarrel, with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Let's just take a minute to reflect. reader of this go to deepen our hearts, and we'll sing the 5 verses for more voices. We had a call this morning, Louise.
This morning I will be sharing 3 scripture verses that speak of freedom, and then a poem that challenges us to share our light in the face of darkness and division. First reading is from Galatians 5, verse 13, Life by the Spirit. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. Second reading is from 2 Corinthians 3, verse 17. Now the Lord is the Spirit. There is freedom. And from Luke 4, verse 18. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to second part of the readings this morning is a poem that was written by Chilan Harkin from the Prophetess. It's when the earth shakes and foundations crumble that our light is called to rise up. It's when everything falls away and shakes us to the core and awakens all of our hidden ghosts that we dig deeper to find one inaccessible strength. It's in times when division is fierce that we must reach for each other and hold each other much, much tighter. Do not fall away now. This is the time to rise. Your light is being summoned. Your integrity is being tested, that it may stand more tall. When everything collapses, we must find within us that which is indomitable. Rise and find the strength in your heart. Rise and find the strength in each other. Burn through your devastation. Make it your fuel. Bring forth your light. Now is not the time to be afraid of the dark. May these words open us to the Spirit's presence.
I just want to say something before we start. This week, for many of us, has been a tumultuous week. And we had some things prepared for this morning, and then it just didn't seem like it spoke in the way in which certainly we were feeling and what seemed to be out there in the universe right now. So we have talked together and sought ideas and gathered together photos and poems and things that felt like we're speaking to the divisiveness that was so present to our sense of what was happening in the world this week, how it just really, really has escalated. And so bear with us as we kind of move through this process of sharing some of our thoughts and some of other people's wisdom and thought, and hopefully it will be food for thought for all of us about how we move together in this world, listening and hearing across the divides.
Yeah, I just want to say that we did a major revision, as Bev was saying, and we want to respond in terms of our response to some of the fears that we may have and anxieties we may have. And much of our focus will be on freedom this morning. Let's just have a brief meditation before we begin the reflection. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, and our universe. Let us dream together, pray together, and work together to build one world of peace and justice for all. Amen. Okay.
You okay? Ready?
What's that? Yeah. With this morning being Remembrance Sunday, we think it's appropriate to speak about freedom. People have been fighting for freedom from the beginning, probably the beginning of time. We've just heard what were interpreted as Jesus' words about freedom. Our intent this morning is to explore freedom, not only as a concept, but also as an action. We are living in dark times. There's much anger and hate and noise in the world today. The conflicts in Gaza in Lebanon, in Israel, Sudan, Ukraine, just to mention a few, are killing and maiming not only soldiers, but civilians, including children in record numbers. Polarizations are deepening, and human rights are being trampled on globally, including in all of North America. I'll make only one comment about the US election this past week, and that is to say that it's left me somewhat immobilized and somewhat disillusioned. We clearly need to bridge the divides, but also ensure that marginalized in our societies are dealt with fairly and with respect. As you've noticed, we've talked about, our service will look a little different today. We're using music and poetry and art and photography and various writings that pertain to peace, hope, and freedom. As they often say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We've collected thoughts, images, and songs that we believe that say this or speak to this way better than either Bev or I can.
We need to get Sharon to put those pictures up to reflect on.
Yeah, okay.
Sharon, those, pardon?
Could you put the pictures up, Sharon, please?
If you would. So a few pictures will come up, and we'd like for you just to look at them, notice what you're feeling, what you might be thinking. These are pictures we took at the United Nations building in New York a few years ago, and we thought we would put a few up. So we'll just leave it there for
Just a few minutes.
15 seconds,
Yeah.
and then go to the next one. And could you go back to the second photograph for a moment, please? If you can't read the words, I can't read all of the words from there, but the world is overarmed and peace is underfunded is what this said on this one wall. And the tally of the amount spent each day on militarization was changing. You know, it was like a ticker. But on that particular day, 1,421,157,144 in one day in militarization around the world. It was sobering. And this is the photograph that went with this poem that Fran just read of "In the darkness we must become the light."
And the words that Fran read were, "Bring forth your light. Now is not the time to be afraid of the dark." Bring forth your light means for me to bring forth your hope, your beliefs, your action to transform in small and large ways the divisiveness, the injustices, the violence, the hate, and the darkness. War is so often characterized as fighting for freedom. Perhaps a better understanding of what is freedom might be helpful. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear better this way? Okay. All right. Do I need to repeat this, or am I getting a mix of nods and okay. I'll just say that bringing forth your light means bring forth your hope, your beliefs, your actions to transform in small and large ways the divisiveness, the injustices, the violence, the hate, and the darkness. War is often characterized as fighting for freedom. Perhaps a better understanding of freedom might be helpful. And we were listening to CBC last week, and Matt Galloway of The Current was interviewing a Yale University historian by the name of Timothy Snyder. And I gather you know Timothy Snyder. I went out and bought the book afterwards and spent a fair amount of time reading Timothy Snyder's book on freedom. The book is entitled On Freedom.
Can I add something in there for a moment? What was really powerful to me too, listening to it, he has his area of history that he has been writing about has been Eastern Europe over many decades. And he, in writing this book, he spent many times in the Ukraine in the last few years with Zelensky and in the communities with what is happening in the war right now. And really powerful examples of what we're going to briefly just speak about.
Well, I think the distinction that was most powerful for me was talking about making a distinction between freedom from and freedom to. And we'll try to elaborate on that as we go along. And Bev, you want to talk a little bit about, I had talked about it last year, some of you may remember, I talked about an incident with my grandmother in the Ukraine. And Bev's going to summarize that from her perspective.
Well, I'm going to say a little more about the notion of freedom from and freedom to. Snyder talks about freedom from is we're free from, say, war, when the war ends. That's freedom from the war. If we're released from prison, we have freedom from those barriers, that building, that incarceration. When the Berlin Wall comes down, we have freedom to walk through that piece of land. But he said that's not enough. He even calls it negative freedom. I'm not sure that, I like just sticking with the freedom from and the freedom to. But the challenge is that freedom then needs to move towards something. That it's not just ending the threat. It's bringing forth the life, the creativity, the connectedness, the trust, the gathering together, the recognizing that we are all one. We are all one people, one world, with very similar needs and wants in our private lives, in our family lives. And so that it's that freedom too. And so I was saying to Don, you know, when he spoke about this, the memory, and for some of you that didn't hear it, it was after the Russian Revolution, and there was a lot of chaos still in the country. There were roving groups of bandits, and the whites and the reds were fighting for power, like the liberals and the conservatives and the Democrats and the Republicans. They were fighting for power. And these roving bandits were in the Ukrainian area where these Mennonite communities were. And they broke into Don's father's home. And he was the eldest boy there at 18, and he had 3 young sisters and his mom. And they were demanding guns, and they said, we don't have any. And I have no idea. He had never told this story to anyone until Don was in Russia visiting for the first time his first cousins who had been exiled to Siberia. And Dad had come from Saskatoon to stay with me until Don came home, because he couldn't stand waiting for news from Russia by himself, and I couldn't get through to Don. The phone calls never were able to reach the hotel he was staying in. It was a scary time for us all. So he started talking one night and talked about this. And the only part I remember him telling me is they came in and they grabbed him and held him against the wall. And then I don't know much else about it. What came out later was when they finally left, were leaving, Don's grandmother said, "Are you hungry? Would you like soup?" And Don said, that was the third way to reach, the humanity in them and the humanity in her. And I said,
Could
as
I
a
just intervene here?
Absolutely.
I think I talked a little bit about the third way, and as psychologists, we often talk about fight or flight in response to a crisis, to a threat. And in this case, it was neither fight nor flight. It was a third way, and this is what Bev is really going to define here.
And I said, and he talked about the humanity in her meeting the humanity in them, and I think that's a really important issue. And I think the other piece is that I believe she was working to go not just from them leaving and having freedom from that assault, because we don't know. I didn't press Dad for what happened during the interval of the time that they were there in the home, and he wasn't sharing that. But as a mother, in having this violence happen in your home, I said, I think that's also a really good example of freedom too, where she, in that moment, in front of her children, with whatever had gone on for the four of them, she took back her space. She took back her authority in her home and offered to share it in a different way with those bandits that were there. I think she was beginning her own journey back into her own freedom in her own home. And then I brought another.
Yeah. Bev has an example to share from her grandfather.
So I brought something that I thought, I think this was him also moving from being in the war and that threat ending into freedom too. My grandfather was in the First World War. He left 4 children at home, and I have been able to pull up, as we were able to do a lot of his military records. I just got a notice actually this morning. I thought, isn't that interesting that there was more information released on the military files? And so what I do know is that he enlisted in 1916, so a year and a half or 2 years into the war, and went overseas and was deployed to France. But it says that they did not think he was going to survive the trenches because of his, I forget what the word was. Anyway, because his chest, they didn't think he was healthy enough to survive in the trenches. And he's listed, he was a tinsmith. He had a what would be a ventilation and company in Edmonton. And he was a tinsmith, and so they sent him back to Britain to work on the war machine, on military vehicles and airplanes and that sort of thing. So he spent the latter part of the war back in England with that military corps. And then when the war was over, the CPR boats had taken all the troops over to Europe from Canada. But when the war was over, they turned back to becoming a commercial fleet of ships. And so many of the soldiers were kind of warehoused until there was vacancy on the ships to go back. So they went back, some of them a little bit at a time. So for several months, he was in England waiting to find a space, or to be given a space to get back home. And during that time, I think he started feeling like I'm returning to my family. It's like he got back in touch with what he was no longer working on military things, and he began creating wood products. I remember being in my home in the front hallway. There was always this lovely frame with pictures of his family in cutout places, and it was this lovely arch shape. And what it was the tip of a wooden propeller off of one of the downed airplanes. And he had made that into a frame that held all of his family pictures. And he also made this box out of the wood from those propellers. And out of the gun shells, the casings of the big gun shells, he made this crest and monogram with my grandmother's initials on it, because he was waiting to begin his life back home with what felt familiar for him, with the little boxes. And so as a child, this always sat on my father's bureau with his cufflinks. So as the little 12-year-old boy, he eventually inherited this. And now it's a treasured piece for me as well. And I think it's that as we begin to move out of the darkness and begin to move into possibility and move into connectedness and reaching out to others across that divide.
I'm sure that all of you have, many of you have memories of stories that have been told, memories of things you might have experienced through a relative that you might want to reflect on and perhaps talk with friends about after the service. I want to say that in Snyder's book and his time in Ukraine, he saw many examples of freedom, which include a factory that had been taken over by Russian troops, and then the area was liberated. What had been for a while a torture chamber under the Russian occupation now became an art studio. It was completely repurposed, and that was freedom too. A bombed-out factory and a torture chamber was bombed is now being used as a children's dance studio. I think this is remarkable.
Is it my turn to do something?
It's your turn.
What did I say? So the concept of freedom, it is so vital in keeping hope active, focusing on possibility, fostering connection. I think I said these things already, didn't I? Moves into life spirit, bringing light into our life. Could you put up that other picture? Yeah, that was another one of those wonderful pictures in one of those wonderful art pieces in the United Nations, reaching up to the light, to the peace dove, to freedom. The human spirit is alive and can inspire that kind of movement in themselves and in others. That we can't be just satisfied with the safety of the threat is gone. We have to be willing to stand up and move it towards that vision of the world being a better, a happier, a healthier, a more collaborative space where the vulnerable are cared for, where nobody is left behind. We're not going to do it perfectly, but we can't give up on that vision.
We have a musical group here. We're very fortunate to have Elaine and Karen on the instrumentals. And
I'm going to read this one thing before that.
okay, so as they're getting ready, we'll pretend as though this was planned. and as they're getting ready, Bev will read
And I'm having a bit of trouble because I see that I didn't bring the one that was enlarged, the writing. So I just thought there is a church that whenever we go to San Francisco, we go to. It's called Glide Memorial. And it's an amazing church that sits right, and it was established between the two wars. It sits right on the border between what's called the Tenderloin in San Francisco and Union Square, which is the center of commerce and activity. And so in this church, it's amazing. It is built on the whole concept that everyone is welcome here. Whether you are a mother who has spent the night out in the open with your child, whether you're coming off from being high on drugs, whether you've got off a cruise ship to come and listen to the wonderful music that happens there, whether you've never been in a church before, it reaches out to the community in amazing, amazing ways. And so I choose to get their newsletter every week in their order of service. And it says that this was the letter that came, or the email that came out. And I want to read it to you because it feels really powerful, knowing how diverse that community is and how they hold each other and how they cook meals for hundreds every week. It's an amazing community. This is the time when we must gather close, hold steady, and dig deep into the roots of our power and our purpose. I know there is fear in the room with us. I know disbelief and numbness have found their way to our doors. I know that this week the world feels colder tonight. But let me remind you, we have always been people who can bear witness to the worst of times and still create miracles of love and possibility. We are not new to this crucible of history. We have been molded by trials, shaped by the fires of resistance, called forth by voices who dare to imagine the world more just, more loving, more whole. This legacy is a change, not a relic. Decades have brought their own reckonings, its own invitation to be bold to those who cannot yet speak, or strong for those who cannot yet stand. They taught us that love is not passive, but an action that pulls us into the streets, that binds us together, that looks and holds us accountable to a vision larger than ourselves.
Thank you, Bev. I'll call on the musical group at this time, Elaine, Karen, Melanie, and Verena. Thank you very much. With the sun on your shoulders and the wind in your sails. And you might have noticed the picture on the photo on the screens that depicts that idea. We receive so much and therefore have much to give. Help us to share in the blessing of giving as well as the happiness of receiving, that love may be more widely shared. The offertory is normally taken at this time, and the mission for, actually, you pointed out, the minute for mission was not really in line with what we were talking about this morning, so we've passed over that. But we'll go on to sing the Spirit of Life, number 2. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, give it life, the stream of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Oh, in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. To be seated. We do not take an offering in this church, but we acknowledge that donations can be placed, if you wish, in the offering box at the entrance. And we appreciate and thank for all of the offerings, whether they be talents or money. And the greeters now will bring the offering box forward. Tom will bring the offering box forward. And while he's doing that, we'll sing the offertory hymn, number 540, Grant Us God. As God the heights of singing,
that ourself and all our living we may offer faithfully. At this time, At this time, this is our time for prayers of the people, and I'd like to begin with a piece of music, and the words for that song or that hymn will come up on the screen. Whoops, not yet. when I was a small child, I spent most every day with my granny, and we spent a lot of time. I would sit beside her on the piano bench, and we would sing and sing and sing. And this particular piece, the sheet music called it A Prayer for Peace. I think the title that it comes under now is This Is My Song. But this was a piece that was written between the two wars, and it's to the tune of Finlandia, which will be familiar to many of you. In our church, we sing several hymns to that tune. Finlandia was it Sibelius? Is that how you say his name? That composed it. And he composed quite a large body of music in which this is included around the Finnish struggle for freedom, and in the 1800s, and then these words were put. So they will come up. You will know the tune. You may know the words. Feel free to sing along or just read the words and meditate on them. It will be the beginning of our prayers of the people.
Before I move on, I enjoyed watching the number of you who obviously knew the words and were mouthing them during the singing of this song. It's obviously very familiar, very familiar to me as well.
So this is our time of prayers of the people. If you have any concerns that you would like to name, or any prayers of thanksgiving that you want to speak about, Kim will come around. Just put your hand up and Kim will come around with the mic. Or any people you're thinking about. So I just need to go to the names.
We'll just take this. We'll gather the thoughts that have been expressed and the prayers that have been expressed into one and pray together the words on the screen, and we'll be scrolling through the Aramaic prayer. I'm going to suggest that we just scroll the words on the screen, and that we won't say them out loud at this time, so that you can say whatever words are most comfortable for you.
And the words I'm going to say right now is, I didn't name the people that are on our prayer list before we do that. And right now I'm scrambling because I have too many papers here, and I haven't got the list. And I just had it. Do you have it right there? Thank you, Kim. Sorry, Dawn. Yep. Sorry about that. We might never get invited back again.
Pretend we planned it all.
It's kind of how the week is felt, eh? Yeah. Whew. So we would like to hold in our thoughts these names of people in our community: Tom and Rhonda, Sharon and Ron, Pat and Bob, George, Eric E., Tanya P., Kevin T., Ellie and Reg, Christine, Wendy, Gary, Louisa, Daniel and Little Rocky, Fran, and Elwyn. And we pray that our individual and collective voices may serve to share a glimpse of connectivity and caring and love with those who are in need. Before we move into the other circle, or into the song Draw the Circle Wide, I'm going to ask you if we could stand up and move to the outside and Do we have something we need to do? Oh no, I'm seeing Sharon waving back there with her finger, but I think she's counting. Sorry. Move to the outside and create a circle so we can see each other's faces and look around this wonderful community and let that circle be an image of us thinking about nobody is left out of our circle of love. Okay, so.
And we'll follow that with the blessing on the screen.
Yeah. So if you'll go reach out to each other.
And as we go, we will count our blessings, embody our faith, live an authentic life, never look down on the struggle for life. Notice behind every face there is a soul at work, and know that wherever we go, the Spirit of God is already there.